Well, hi everyone, welcome to The Firewall. I'm Bill Whittle. You know, one of the things that we conservatives, especially Tea Party conservatives, are most suspicious of is this growing trend towards elitism. And we have pretty good reason to be suspicious of it. Dedicated man of principle, Arlen Specter, was a Republican from 1965 until 2009, when it became clear to him that his Senate seat for life was in danger, so he switched to being a Democrat so as not to deprive the great republic of his once-in-a-generation talent. Charlie Crist down in Florida took millions of dollars from Republican donors until he was defeated in the Republican primary, and so he decided to run as an independent so as not to deprive the great republic of his once-in-a-generation talent. And up in Alaska, Republican Lisa Murkowski, defeated in the primary, is also running as an independent so as not to deprive the great republic of her once-in-a-generation talent. Miss Murkowski has only been a senator for about 8 years, having been granted the fiefdom by her noble father Frank, Duke of Alaska, whose noble lineage goes back a respectable 30 years or so. These people are all pikers, of course, compared to the late Robert Byrd, Democrat from West Virginia, who was elected U.S. Senator a few months before I was born, way back in 1959. And, of course, the Democratic Party's late Crown Prince himself, Teddy Kennedy, who, descended from the bluest blood of all, never had a job that didn't entail spending other people's money and creating the rules and regulations that other people had to live by. What is it about all of this that seems vaguely and unpleasantly familiar? It smells a bit like a ruling class, doesn't it? Well, suppose you lived in medieval times, and like most people, you wanted good food, fine clothes, maybe a smallish mansion out in the country, and to be waited on hand and foot before coming to the unpleasant realization that acquiring these things requires an awful lot of hard work. Bummer. But then you get the brilliant idea of raising an army to get other people to do all of that for you at the point of a sword. A few quick and bloody campaigns, and you and the fruit of your magnificent loins are set for life. Elitism, modern elitism, is just the old-fashioned, ancient, productivity-stealing corpse of aristocracy and nobility, given a fresh slathering of pancake makeup, a Harvard degree, say, or a place out in the Hamptons, to look good at the viewing. We call the army of servants today congressional aides, and the exclusive carriage rides and fox hunts are called limousines or fact-finding missions, but the moral equation is the same. You do not have a right, the divine right of kings, let's say, to rule over other people because of who you are. Now, politically, there's something interesting about people who throughout history have supported elitism. For example, Bill Maher has said that he's in favor of rule by the liberal elite, but of course, that's because Bill Maher is one of the liberal elite. He despises common people like you and me. He is, however, generously willing to assume the mantle of nobility and tell the rest of us knuckle-dragging, flag-waving, racist idiots how to lead our lives. Be more than a little suspicious of people who say the best thing for people like you is to put the power over your lives into the hands of people like them. But the real issue here when it comes to rule by the elite is the practical argument, whether or not it actually works. And it doesn't work. And the reason it doesn't work is so obvious that you have to be fantastically intelligent not to see it. Take the 10 smartest guys in the world, the 10 brightest people we have today on planet Earth, and then tell them that they have to make the decisions to grow the economy. They have absolute authority and get to decide everything. Well, first of all, the 10 smartest guys in the room are not going to agree on what to do. That alone should tell you something very important. Second, while it is true that every one of them is far more intelligent than people like you or me, there is one stubborn fact that remains. There are several, scores, maybe hundreds, of specific areas in which you know more than the 10 smartest guys on planet Earth. Maybe you know how to make a fly fishing lure better than any of them. Maybe you know more about the right temperature in which to store fresh milk. Maybe you know more about the details of the Battle of Cannae on August 2nd in 216 BC. Or maybe you better know how to fly an instrument approach in quarter-mile visibility. There will always be something, actually there will always be many things, that you know better than the smartest people in the world. Now, The American economy is simply the set of tens or hundreds of small transactions taken by 300 million people. That comes out to billions, thousands of millions of individual decisions being made every day. How do 10 Harvard-educated whiz kids in a very nice office in Washington, D.C. know, for example, more about what it takes to run a gas station in Boise, Idaho, than the guy who actually runs the gas station in Boise, Idaho? How can this economic team of geniuses know what he pays for his groceries, what percentage of his income goes to college for however many kids he has, what his savings amount to, where he plans to go on vacation, what year he plans to retire, and all of the thousands of other factors that make up that individual man's decision to set the price of gasoline for his little neighborhood up in Boise? Now multiply those thousands of factors across hundreds of millions of individuals and realize that they're all tied together. The price that man in Boise sets for gasoline determines what the man a few blocks down has to pay out in costs to fuel his trucking company, or whether or not the woman at the next pump spends or saves enough in gas to afford to buy a flat screen TV at Best Buy. Who is smart enough to track all of that, let alone interpret it, let alone plan it? No one is that smart. No 10 people that smart, no 1,000 people are that smart. The level of intelligence of the 10 smartest people in the world is not 10 times or 100 times or 1,000,000 times less than what is needed to run an economy. The 10 smartest people in the world are many hundreds of millions of times too stupid to understand something that complex. The only way the elites in Washington who want to rule over our lives can track or even pretend to predict something this complex is to control every aspect of it, to have every single economic decision need an approval filed in triplicate at the appropriate government bureau. They must tell you what to do, when to do it, how to do it, all of that in order to ensure that you live your life according to their master plan. And then everything slows down to fit through this intelligence bottleneck until it eventually collapses. And we have seen this time and time and time and time again. My friends, life is not a series of billiard balls on an infinite, frictionless plane where all of the interactions and collisions can be predicted out into infinity. Humans are unpredictable and often unreasonable. Any equation with human nature in it becomes chaotic. 2 humans are chaos squared, and the variables involved in 300 million humans making up the U.S. economy can be described as chaos to the 300 millionth power. The only way to even try to get a handle on such a number and on such complexity is with 300 million individual processors spread out all across the country, each making individual decisions on those events closest to them. 10 processors a few thousand miles away in Washington, even if they're twice as fast as any single one of the 300 million out there, is massively, massively inadequate to the task. Conservative distrust of elitism is not, as guys like Bill Maher would have you believe, just jealousy on the part of NASCAR-loving rednecks who were too stupid to get into a good school. Distrust of elitist thinking is based on its historical failures, the moral repugnance of people who make the claims in favor of an aristocracy, and especially on the fact that it just cannot work due to a massive failure of intelligence. How stupid do you have to be not to see that? Maybe these elitists are not so smart after all. There's something to think about. And to keep these messages coming, go to declarationentertainment.com and see if we can convince you to become a citizen producer and help take back your culture. I'm Bill Whittle. We'll see you next time on The Firewall.